Lewis Charleston had always found solace in the forest. The ancient woods near his modest countryside home had a timeless quality, a place where nature thrived unbothered by the huddle of modern life. It was here, among the towering trees and meandering trails, that he felt most at peace. Each morning, he and Max, his loyal German shepherd, embarked on their daily walks. The trail they followed was well trodden by now, a path that wound through dense underbrush, past trickling streams, and into pockets of serene, untouched wilderness. For Lewis, these walks were much more than a routine. They were a chance to connect with something primal, something that felt alive and ancient. The air always seemed cleaner in the forest, free from the thick smog of the nearby town. The trees whispered stories of times long past, of storms weathered, of seasons come and gone, and he could always count on the sound of the birds chirping, singing, calling to each other in the early morning light. This particular morning started like any other. The sun filtered through the canopy, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light. The crisp air carried the earthy scent of damp leaves and pine, a smell that always filled Lewis with a deep sense of calm. He hummed a tune softly to himself as Max trotted ahead, sniffing at the undergrowth. But halfway through their usual route, something changed. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. Max stopped abruptly, his ears pricking up, and let out a low growl. This was unusual. Max was a disciplined dog, rarely startled. Lewis paused, scanning the woods for any sign of danger. A rustling sound came from the bushes ahead. It wasn't the wind. Max barked a sharp, insistent sound that sent a shiver up Lewis's spine. "What is it, boy?" Lewis asked, hurrying toward him. Max had fixated on a dense patch of bushes, circling it with an urgency Lewis had never seen before. Lewis crouched down, parting the branches carefully. At first, he saw nothing unusual. But then he spotted it, a tiny, shivering creature huddled in the shadows. It was unlike anything Lewis had ever seen. The animal was small, no larger than a kitten, and almost entirely hairless. Its pale pink skin gleamed faintly in the sunlight, and its oversized ears twitched nervously. It let out a high-pitched squeal, a sound so plaintive and vulnerable that Lewis's heart ached. "What are you?" he whispered, his curiosity mingled with concern. The creature made no attempt to flee. It merely looked up at him with squinted, barely open eyes, trembling violently. For a moment, Lewis considered leaving it. Wild animals were best left alone. Its mother might return, and interfering could do more harm than good. But as he and Max resumed their walk, the creature's desperate cries echoed behind them, tugging at Lewis's conscience. By the time they looped back to the same spot at the end of their hike, the tiny animal was still there. It hadn't moved, its frail body curled tightly against the cold ground. Lewis sighed. "Maybe her parents are gone," he murmured to Max. "Or maybe she was abandoned." He couldn't just leave it. Carefully, he scooped up the trembling creature, cradling it in his hands. Its skin was surprisingly warm, its tiny limbs fragile as twigs. Max sniffed at it curiously but didn't protest. Once home, Lewis set the creature on his kitchen counter, examining it under the warm glow of the overhead light. "What are you?" he muttered again. Its resemblance to a baby rabbit was uncanny, yet something about it was off. Its legs seemed longer, its ears larger, and its face more angular than any rabbit he had ever seen. The creature whimpered softly, its tiny mouth opening and closing as if in hunger. Lewis hastily poured a small bowl of milk, placing it in front of the creature. But instead of drinking, it clumsily stepped into the bowl, its paws slipping on the slick surface. Frustrated, Lewis decided it was time to call the local vet. After describing the animal over the phone, the vet seemed intrigued. "Bring it in," he urged. "I'd like to see this for myself." At the clinic, the vet wasted no time examining the creature. He administered fluids to combat dehydration and a nutritional paste to provide sustenance. All the while, his brow furrowed in thought. "You're right, this isn't a rabbit," he said at last. "Its physiology is completely different. The limbs, the organ placement, it doesn't match any species I'm familiar with." Lewis stared at the vet, his confusion deepening. "So what is it?" The vet shook his head. "I don't know, it's unique, but it seems healthy enough for now. Take it home and care for it. Maybe as it grows, we'll get a clearer picture." Lewis left the clinic with more questions than answers. Back home, he set up a cozy bed for the creature in Max's old dog basket, lining it with soft blankets. To his relief, the creature seemed to settle quickly, curling up and falling into a deep sleep. Over the next few days, Lewis monitored it closely, feeding it with a syringe and watching as it began to grow stronger. By the third day, however, strange things began to happen. It started in the middle of the night. Louis was jolted awake by a loud crash from downstairs. Heart pounding, he grabbed a flashlight and crept down the stairs. The back door stood wide open, though he was certain he had locked it. Outside, the metal trash cans were overturned, their contents strewn across the patio. At first, Louis assumed it was the work of raccoons, but when he returned to the living room, he found the little creature sitting in the middle of the floor, its head tilted as if in innocent curiosity. "You didn't? No, that's not possible," Louis muttered, shaking his head. But the incidents continued. Each night, Louis awoke to find his house in disarray, food packages torn open, furniture knocked over, strange scratch marks on the walls. And always the creature was nearby, watching him with those squinted, unreadable eyes. It was growing rapidly, too. Within a week, it was no longer the tiny, fragile thing he had found in the woods. Its body was now covered in a fine layer of dark fur, and its legs had become strong and muscular. Louis began documenting everything, sharing his observations with the vet. "It's active at night, incredibly active," he explained during one call. "Almost like it has boundless energy, and it's smarter than I expected." The vet was equally perplexed. "Keep monitoring it," he advised. "We'll figure this out." One night, desperate for some peace, Louis decided to keep the creature in his bedroom with the door securely closed. Surely, with no way to roam the house, it would stay out of trouble. But at 2 a.m., Louis was once again awakened by a loud bang from downstairs. He sat up in bed, his heart sinking. The creature was still in its basket, looking up at him with wide, innocent eyes. If it wasn't the creature, then what was it? Grabbing a flashlight, Louis descended the stairs. The sight that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. His living room was filled with movement, 6 large, furry animals scurrying through the chaos. They were about the size of small dogs, their thick bodies covered in coarse fur, and their sharp claws made quick work of Louis's furniture and belongings. Louis watched in stunned silence as the wombats rummaged through his pantry, knocking over jars and tearing into boxes of cereal. Suddenly, it all made sense: the mysterious messes, the overturned trash cans, the strange noises. The creature he had taken in wasn't a rabbit or anything remotely similar. It was a baby wombat, and its family had been looking for it. The phone rang, jolting Louis out of his shock. It was the vet, calling with new information. "I think I've identified your mystery animal," he said. "It's a Chinese naked wombat. Extremely rare and not native to this area, which makes its presence here quite extraordinary. But there's something else you should know: that wombats are incredibly social animals. They live in tight-knit families and rarely stray far from their group." Louis laughed dryly. "Well, that explains a lot. Its family is here right now in my living room." The vet was amazed. "That's incredible, but it also means you'll need to figure out what to do next. It's illegal to keep wombats as pets, and they're better off in a suitable environment." Over the next few days, Louis worked with the vet to find a solution. A wildlife sanctuary in the nearby county agreed to take in the wombat family, providing them with a safe and natural habitat. On the day of the move, Louis packed the wombats into carriers, loading them into his truck with the help of the sanctuary staff. As they arrived at the sanctuary, the wombats seemed to sense their new surroundings. They bounded out of the carriers and into the lush greenery, exploring their new home with enthusiasm. But the young wombat, the one Louis had cared for, hesitated. It clung to his legs, squealing plaintively. The sanctuary owner, a kind-hearted woman named Clara, smiled. "It seems like she's taken quite a liking to you." Louis knelt down, gently stroking the wombat's head. "You're free now," he whispered, his heart aching. "But you'll always have a place in my heart." With a final, tender goodbye, Louis left the sanctuary, his heart filled with both sadness and peace. The experience had changed him. It wasn't just about the bond he had formed with the mysterious creature. It was about understanding the intricate web of life that connected every living thing. He had helped a family of wombats reunite, and in doing so, he had rediscovered his own connection to the wild. From that day forward, Louis returned to the forest with a renewed sense of awe and respect for nature. The forest, once a place of quiet solitude, had become a symbol of the bond between humans and the natural world, a reminder that sometimes life's most unexpected encounters can lead to the most profound transformations. And every time he visited the sanctuary, he was reminded of that serendipitous day in the forest, when he had stumbled upon a creature that had forever changed his life.